listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Radio's authority on the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology, celebrating 25 years of broadcasting. Broadcasting around the world and to the great beyond.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Good evening, one and all, and welcome to the X-Zone. My name is Rob McConnell, and for the next 4 hours, I'm your host. I'm your guide as together we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X-Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And the X-Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 8 p.m. Eastern until midnight on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, the Digital Broadcast Network, Digital Satellite Network, Talkstar Radio Network, and across Europe on Radio X. Worldwide toll-free, 1-800-610-7035. My email address is xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV. And you can listen to the X-Zone archives at www.xzonepodcast.com. I'd also like to let you know that if you're traveling and you don't have internet access, but you do have access to a telephone, any handheld device that allows you to get telephone calls, all you have to do is dial 213-401-0080, and you can listen to the X-Zone from any phone. It's that simple. We are totally accessible here, not only in Canada, not only in the United States, not only in South America, but around the world. My first guest tonight, X-Zone Nation, is Robert Waggoner, and we're going to be talking about dreams. Now, 40 years ago, author Robert Waggoner taught himself a simple trick to lucid dream, or become consciously aware of dreaming while in the dream state. Logging more than 1,000 lucid dreams since that time, he has used this scientifically validated state to explore lucid dreaming's potential for accessing subconscious clarity, healing the emotional and the physical self, seeking spiritual insights, and communicating with an aware and responsive inner self. Now, after the success of his acclaimed book, Lucid Dreaming, Getaway to the Inner Self, Robert has written a second book with co-author Caroline McCready, Lucid Dreaming Plain and Simple, to help beginners induce lucid dreams, stabilize them, and learn how to use them for growth, healing, and personal transformation. He also co-edits an online magazine, The Lucid Dreaming Experience, at www.luciddreammagazine.com. And you know, lucid dreaming is one of my most favorite topics. It really is, because everybody dreams. So joining me now is Robert Waggoner. And Robert, welcome to the X-Zone.
Oh, thanks very much, Rob. It's great to be here.
Tell me about your insight, your research, your investigation into dreaming, and what you've come up with.
You know, it was 40 years ago when I was a high school student. I taught myself a simple technique that I basically kind of created on how to become consciously aware within my dreams. And after practicing this technique for 3 nights, I had my first consciously induced lucid dream. I realized within the dream, this is a dream. Mm-hmm. And once you're consciously aware in the dream, you can decide what you want to do. You can do experiments. You can fly around, talk to dream figures, and all that kind of thing. So it was one of the most amazing, incredible experiences that I'd ever had.
So that everybody understands, Robert, tell us exactly what a lucid dream is and how a lucid dream differs from a regular dream, if there is such a thing.
Yeah, so a lucid dream is any dream in which you consciously realize this is a dream. In the experience, you realize this is a dream. Mm-hmm. For example, you might see Frankenstein coming down the road, and all of a sudden it hits you. Wait a second, Frankenstein is a fictional character.
No, that's my
this must be a
ex-mother-in-law.
dream.
Yeah.
That's your ex. And then you might say, oh my goodness, this not only is a dream, it's a part of a nightmare.
Right.
But in any case, lucid dreams are those in which we realize that we're dreaming. And once we realize that we're dreaming, then we can decide what we want to do. We can go up to Frankenstein and ask him, hey, Frankenstein, what do you represent? Or you can fly around, do experiments. You have that kind of critical awareness that's essential for lucid dreaming.
I guess we can say once you establish yourself in a lucid dream by realizing you're in a lucid dream, the sky is the limit. I have a lot of lucid dreams, and I have a control technique that I use to see whether or not I am in fact dreaming before I start having a lot of fun. I try and read something, whether it's a street sign, a newspaper, anything, and if I cannot read, I know I'm in a dream, and that's when the fun starts.
Right, those reality checks are great. Sometimes people will pull their finger, and if their finger elongates, then they know they're in a lucid dream. Or if they can levitate, then they know they're in a lucid dream. Any of those things will help prove to you that you're lucidly aware in the dream state, and you're right, that's when the fun begins.
Robert, what is the physiology and the psychology behind a lucid dream?
You know, it was back in 1975 and 1978 that researchers in England and also at Stanford in the U.S. Started to look into, could you validate lucid dreaming scientifically? And so they realized that people had rapid eye movement during the dream state, and they wondered, could a lucid dreamer, when they're consciously aware in a lucid dream, move their eyes left to right 8 times and thereby prove that they're consciously aware within a lucid dream, and that would all be recorded on the RIM polygraph paper. And so when that evidence first came out in 1980, at first people could barely believe it. Buddhists and others have been talking about this for thousands of years, but to really see that someone could be consciously aware while dreaming and asleep was just utterly profound. But of course, I'd been doing it for 5 years, and I was so excited when the scientific evidence finally came out.
So when we go to sleep and we get into the dream state, what decides within ourselves whether it's going to be a nightmare, a regular dream, an erotic dream, or a lucid dream?
You know, that's a wonderful question. Some scientists would say that they believe in continuity theory, that what you're thinking about and concentrating on during the day will likely come to pass in your dreams. Or Freud might call it day residue. The day residue of the day before will appear in some disguised form. But they're really not exactly sure, why some nights you have a nightmare and why other nights you have a pleasant dream.
So is it safe to... I'm sorry, Robert, go ahead.
No, it's one of those things where if you're more mindful during the day, then you'll be more mindful at night and more likely to become lucidly aware. So that's one thing that continuity theory helps with lucid dreaming.
So am I to understand, Robert, that even though we are so advanced scientifically in some respects, and that medical research and psychological research has discovered many unknowns over the years, that we are still in a gray area when it comes to dreaming?
In many respects, dreams is a very complicated process. There's various stages of dreaming, and there's a lot of brain activity, there's a lot of neurotransmitters, there's a lot of hormones that are sent during that time, and so it's a very complex activity. They think it has to do likely with emotional processing, with possibly memory processing. There's some science that shows that creativity appears to be enhanced in dreams, but the larger purpose of dreams is still, I would consider, an unknown.
I believe that many indigenous peoples believe that there is a connection between dreaming and their spirituality. Has this ever been proven or investigated or researched by the scientific community?
Well, there's certainly a lot of psychotherapists and psychiatrists who would agree, particularly people who followed the path of Freud and also Carl Jung. Carl Jung would oftentimes talk about numinous dreams or noetic dreams, dreams of spiritual import and power. And he oftentimes called these big dreams as well, because sometimes they showed something about our future life. But the beautiful thing about lucid dreaming is when you're consciously aware in the dream state, then you can experiment with that kind of thing. And actually, lucid dreaming has a deep connection with spiritual and wisdom traditions for many thousands of years.
So tell me, what are some of the other practical applications for lucid dreaming?
Yeah, so lucid dreaming, besides just having fun, which is a wonderful thing, some people use it to access creativity. They want to get creative insight about a project they're working on, or want to resolve a problem that they have from the waking world. In a lucid dream, they'll try to do that. Also, sometimes people use it for emotional healing and also physical healing. And it's amazing some of the emotional healing stories you hear. Psychotherapists often use lucid dreams to help people who have post-traumatic stress disorder.
Really?
And their symptom of recurring nightmares. Because these poor people oftentimes wake up every night screaming and yelling because they're having that recurring nightmare. And so what they realize is that if they could tell them or help them realize to become consciously aware at least once, become lucidly aware just once in that recurring nightmare, and just change one thing, then normally the nightmares would basically totally cease at that point.
That's wonderful.
And so people who have done this have just been so pleased. It doesn't deal with all the issues of PTSD, but being able to get a good night's sleep is one great advantage.
Exonation Robert Waggoner is our special guest. We're talking about lucid dreaming this hour. Robert is the co-editor of Lucid Dream Magazine. The website is luciddreammagazine.com. And he has also authored and co-authored books on dreaming, and his book website is lucidadvice.com. That's www.lucidadvice.com. So tell me some of the practical uses for lucid dreaming. We talked about the PTSD, the phobias, etc., but I understand that you have a chapter on using lucid dreaming to heal the physical body. Really?
Right. It's one of the incredible things that you hear about from lucid dreamers. They become consciously aware within a lucid dream. They remember in their physical life they have some ailment, and then they project healing intent or healing energy on the ailment within the lucid dream, and oftentimes they wake up and the physical ailment has disappeared or is significantly improved, or the pain is gone or whatever. For example, there was a woman who had horrible plantar warts on her feet. She had been trying to visualize these things to go away for months, and nothing was happening. And so she talked to an experienced lucid dreamer who suggested that she try in a lucid dream to make them go away. Within the week, she had a lucid dream. She remembered her desire to get rid of the plantar warts. And so basically what she did, Rob, she just created a ball of healing light between her hands in her lucid dream. She put it over each of her feet, intending for them to be healed. And she says when she woke up, overnight, all the plantar warts had turned black, and within 10 days, they all fell off and never returned. And so that would be an example of a lucid dream healing experience. Also, I did want to say that in our magazine, The Lucid Dreaming Experience, if you go to the September 2015 issue, there's a wonderful story by a young man, I believe he's Canadian, who had gastroesophageal reflux disease, that I think they call it GERD.
Yep.
And he said it was so bad he had to sleep sitting up in an easy chair. I mean, that's how bad this was. And so he decided in lucid dreams to try to direct healing energy on it. And after the second lucid dream, he realized that the GERD had disappeared, and he remains GERD-free to this day. So this is one of these areas where I think they could do scientific studies to look at physical healing from a lucid dream state.
When it comes to getting plantar warts off your feet in a dream and getting rid of GERD in a dream, how do we explain this? First of all, can we prove that prior to the so-called revelation of curing during the dream that these ailments really did exist?
I think in these cases, there's probably medical evidence that the people went to the doctor and sought out the normal medical treatments,
right,
and to no avail. But what you could do is get 40 people who have some non-life-threatening ailment, like some skin disorder,
right,
that resists conventional treatment. Have 20 of them who already know how to lucid dream, teach them the special techniques on healing in lucid dreams and how to go about it, and let the other 20 people just be the control group. And I imagine within 6 months you would see much greater differences in the experimental group who are using lucid dreaming towards healing than you would in the control group.
You know,
so
in olden days, these would be classified as miracles. So here we are in the 21st century. How do we explain that you can cure a physical ailment in a dream state? That means the body has to be able to regenerate and rejuvenate itself in certain conditions, in certain areas. Like this is, this would be the medical breakthrough of medical breakthroughs. Instead of inducing people into comas to perform and to release and relax them during traumatic times, they could just induce lucid dreaming and, heal themselves.
The Buddhists have a saying that an action performed at the level of a lucid dream is normally 7 times more powerful than one performed at the waking state. And so I think when you're in this deep level or this deep state of unconsciousness, but you're consciously aware there, when you direct and focus your healing intent, it can make a powerful impact on the body. And it's also interesting, just as a historical note, that across the Mediterranean around the time of Christ were all these temples to Asclepius, who was the semi-divine healer who would normally come in dreams. So people would come to the Asclepian temples to ritually bathe and do various things, and then sleep, waiting for Asclepius to appear in a dream and heal them. And sometimes it'd be Asclepius or one of his daughters, like Panacea or Hyena, and they would show up. And sometimes it wasn't a healing. Sometimes they'd just tell them, no longer drink out of that stream, drink out of this spring over here. And it might have been that the stream was contaminated or something. But in any case, there's a great historical precedent for using dreams for healing, and even in that time, there were incredible, miraculous stories of complete physical healing.
Not to be disrespectful to the Buddhists or to our ancient elders and ancient relatives in the Middle East, but what does modern science say about these events?
Well, so Stephen LaBerge was one of the people who did the original research that provided the evidence for lucid dreaming, which came out in 1980 and 81. And I remember he and Jane Gockenbach, another researcher, they did a survey in Omni magazine, I believe it was in 1987. And in the survey of lucid dreamers, they asked them if they'd ever had a physical healing occur by virtue of their lucid dreams. And as I recall, they had 7 or 8, they had like 50 people who said they believe they did, and when they went through it, they could see that there was probably 8 of them that appeared to be physical healings that had occurred by their actions in a lucid dream. So people have been talking about this for a long time, but again, the medical establishment has been quite slow to investigate this.
Slow or cautious?
Well, it's one of those things. If you're a lucid dreamer and do it, then you don't have any doubts. But for a lot of people, especially people who are very busy and don't have very good dream recall or haven't had lucid dreams, this might just seem utterly far-fetched.
But wouldn't it make sense if, and I don't have any reason to doubt you, Robert, I'm unaware of the particulars of the case, but just listening to this, I'm saying, my God, this could be the answer to the medical disasters that we're seeing. Like you mentioned, PTSD. What about cancer? What about leukemia? What about Alzheimer's? What about all these diseases that are such, they're such a heavy load, not only to the families who share the grief and the pain and the struggle and the strife of the person who's afflicted, but then you've got the sociological implications and load throughout the community of the cost of medicine and so on and so forth. Why wouldn't the scientific community and the medical community, drop what they're doing, bring a few, and bring people into the labs, the sleep labs, the dream labs, and conduct the experimentation on this right away? Let's prove it. Let's get it implemented. Let's cure people.
I would love to see it. I'd love to see it. Now in my first book, Lucid Dreaming, Gateway to the Inner Self, I gave about a dozen examples of what appear to be healings in lucid dreams. But I did also give 2 or 3 examples of where the person had no healing response or showed no evidence of healing. And the reason I brought that up was I wanted people to see how those lucid dreams were different. For example, in those lucid dreams, the lucid dreamer might try to find a lucid dream doctor to heal them. Yeah. So instead of acting on their own, they would seek out a lucid dream doctor. And I remember one woman found the lucid dream doctor, and he said, well, good grief, it's Friday, it's 5 o'clock, I got to go, and you're always late. And so you can see already on kind of a psychological level, she has some resistance. And then when the doctor would make suggestions, she would just blow them off. And so in not every case does a healing occur, but that's why I've written these books, to kind of give people the instructions on how to improve your chances, how to go about it in a thoughtful way, and see what happens.
I love it.
So I look forward to the medical establishment looking into this, because when we start to realize the power of the unconscious mind for healing, I think we'll be making great steps forward.
I think when we finally realize what the other 90% of our brain is actually capable of doing, the sky will be the limit. Listen, Robert, you and I have to take a short break at the bottom of the hour. This is very interesting. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us tonight here on the X-Zone. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks.
X-Zone Nation, Robert Waggoner is our special guest this hour. Just imagine that. Cures in the dream, which means that you have the ability to make the changes that you need within the dream state, and it's based on belief. And I don't know how many times I've said this to you, members of the Exo Nation. Belief is the strongest power in the universe. But maybe there's a lot more to belief than we actually know. Robert Waggoner is our guest. www.lucidadvice.com is his book website. And his magazine website is www.luciddreammagazine.com. And I'm going to start going to that site because dreams intrigue me. The only difference between a dream and reality is just doing it. I'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away. You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Welcome back, everyone. This is the X-Zone. I am Rob McConnell, coming to you from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. I get a number of emails every day asking where Hamilton, Ontario is. Well, if you take a map of Canada or go on Google Earth, you will see that Hamilton, Ontario is in between Toronto, Ontario, and Niagara Falls, Ontario, on the shores of Lake Ontario. Hamilton is a steel town, was a steel town. It is a two-tiered town. There is an escarpment, and, the main downtown core is down on the lower part of the escarpment, which is lake level, and then the rest of the city of Hamilton is up on the upper part of the escarpment. We have our own international airport here. It's a great city, and I cordially invite all our listeners from around the world, if you have the opportunity of coming here to Hamilton, please, the most friendliest people you will find in Canada, hardworking, dedicated, and just great people who know how to have fun and to treat visitors with respect. There you go. I said my little bit. And by the way, I don't get paid for promoting Hamilton. It's because I love the city I live in. My guest this hour is Robert Waggoner. He is the author of, Lucid Dreaming, Getaway to the Inner Self. And he's also co-authored with Carolyn McCready, Lucid Dreaming Plain and Simple, to help beginners introduce and induce lucid dreams. He is also the co-editor of Lucid Dream magazine. Now, if you'd like to find out more about Robert or get a couple of his books, www.lucidadvice.com, and his magazine website is www.luciddreammagazine.com. You know, Robert, in your book, you give samples of dreamers who showed no health improvement. Now, what happened in those instances, and what kept them from the same success that the person who had plantar's warts got, or the guy who had GERD? What went wrong?
Right. So in the positive healing examples, you could see that the lucid dreamer, had a positive expectation, positive belief about the possible success. The person surrendered to the lucid dream and accepted whatever happened or whatever intuitive information came. And they also acted on their own accord. They used the healing techniques proactively. And so those were the positive examples. But in the examples where nothing seemed to happen, the person had either a very neutral expectation or actually a negative belief that there'd be any success at all. A lot of them showed kind of a rigidity to the lucid dream. So the lucid dream would offer advice or symbolic information, but they would just ignore it because it conflicted with their waking assumptions or beliefs. And finally, these people, instead of acting on their own accord, they did these things like tried to find the healing place or the healing doctor or the special liquid or the special pill to take. Instead of acting on their own, it seemed to them that they had to get external help. And so for those cases, there wasn't much healing evidence. So you can see there's considerable difference between the two groups.
So does that mean if someone went to sleep planning to have a healing lucid dream, if I can use that term, and they prepared themselves in the waking state, then once they were asleep, having had positive reinforcement, then this would certainly help the process?
Right, just a positive expectation,
right.
just an open attitude. And also it does help, though, to have a plan created beforehand. Like my friend Ed Kellogg would create a chant, like, "Now from my hands with power divine, the healing light on my broken foot shines." And so by making this chant, it would focus his energy, focus his intent, and he would conceive it in the waking state so that he'd be ready to use it as soon as he became lucidly aware.
Robert, can we use lucid dreaming to communicate with our inner self?
That is basically the thesis of my first book, Lucid Dreaming, Gateway to the Inner Self. What happened to me, Rob, is that in 1985, I joined up with some people who were lucid dreamers who were doing monthly experiments in lucid dreaming. And we would try to do the experiment, and then we'd type up our lucid dream, and we'd mail it to one person who would then photocopy it and send it out to everybody. And so in 1985, in I think March that year, the goal was find out what a dream figure or a dream character in your lucid dream represents. And so I became lucidly aware. I followed a woman into an office, and there were 3 women in the office, and then there was one man in a 3-piece suit, an elderly gentleman. And so knowing that it's a lucid dream, I just walked up to him and said, "Excuse me, but what do you represent?" And then an incredible thing happened. Instead of the dream figure responding, a voice boomed out a response from above him. An invisible voice just boomed out a response. And when I woke up, I began to wonder, is there an awareness behind the dream? We're so kind of structured and taught in the waking world to interact with other people and animals and objects and everything. But in this case, it appeared that if you just shouted out a question to this non-visible awareness behind the dream, there might be a response. And so after that, I would become lucidly aware, I'd ignore every dream figure, and I'd just shout out something like, "Hey, dream, show me something important for me to see." And then suddenly the entire lucid dream would change, and I'd be looking at something that was either symbolically or literally very important for me to see. And that's when I realized that there was a responsive layer, a non-visible awareness that seemed to be interested in educating me and responding to my request.
You know, I've often wondered if this waking world of ours is not the dream world and the dream world is the real world. Does that make sense?
You know, some people have thought that too, because the interesting thing, in a lucid dream, you can actually influence the waking world. So the example of helping your physical body or doing some emotional healing or getting rid of a phobia by working it out in a lucid dream. And so you wonder sometimes about the true meaning and depth of dreaming. It's one of these places that's been ignored by science, but it might be the place where we have the most radical breakthroughs.
Well, you know what? Many people, and I've said this myself, you know, I've been faced with a decision during the day and I just don't have time or something's just not working. And I'll say, you know, let me sleep on it. And I will eventually get home. I just calm myself down before I go to bed. I just sit in the dark and I just have a little cup of decaffeinated tea in the nice quietness of the house. I go to sleep, and by the morning, I have solved that problem. So, you know, let me sleep on it. Does work.
Yeah, and it's interesting. There's examples in the book, Exploring the World of Lucid Dreams by Stephen LaBerge, of a software programmer who was good at lucid dreaming. And oftentimes when he'd have difficult software problems, he'd try to have a lucid dream. When he'd become lucidly aware, he would call Albert Einstein to the table, and he and Albert Einstein would sit there and work on the programming code and try to figure out how to get it debugged and working properly. And as soon as they came to the solution, he'd tell Einstein to go away and he'd memorize the code. And the gentleman reported that in 99% of the cases when he woke up, the code was just totally dead on accurate. And so you can see how you can kind of access the knowledge of your unconscious mind, but in a lucid dream you can do it actively and in a very directed sense.
Is it possible to go forward in time in a lucid dream?
You know, there's some fascinating anecdotes of lucid dreamers who have sought out information beforehand. I'm part of an organization, the International Association for the Study of Dreams, and every fall we have a conference that's online. We call it the Cyber Conference because it investigates psi dreams. So psi dreams would be like precognitive, telepathic, clairvoyant dreams. And one of the things we do is a contest where we have a precognitive dream contest. So someone's created a group of about 200 images or photos. It's on someone's computer. They're all randomized there. No one's seen them except the person who pulled it together. And then you have to dream. You incubate and try to dream about what is the target image that's going to be selected in 2 days. And you have to post your dreams before the target is randomly selected. And in some of these examples, people have become lucidly aware and heard the name of the artist. And it's all recorded. They have to post their experience, and then 2 days later, the random image is drawn, and they nailed it. One time, a gentleman heard Vermeer, and the target image picked 2 days later turned out to be Vermeer's painting, The Geographer. So these are also ways that lucid dreaming could be used to help with this issue of precognitive dreams. Scientists don't like it because they say, most precognitive dreams are just retrocognitive. An event happens, and then you point to your dream journal and say, here it is. But in a lucid dream, you could actually possibly seek out the information beforehand, wake up with it, and give it to the researcher, and then both you and he wait until the results come about. And so you can see how lucid dreaming would give a lot of enhanced ability to look at some of these issues in parapsychology.
It almost sounds as if lucid dreaming is the sleep time version of remote viewing.
There are some similarities. There's some wonderful books by Dale Groff, who headed up the Stargate program by the Department of Defense. And in some of his lucid dreams, he's picked out information that's outside of time and space. And it is, in that sense, very similar to remote viewing. But the beautiful thing about lucid dreaming, you're consciously aware, you can experiment, you can play around, and you can see, the actual nature of reality.
We've had Dale Gruff on the show a few times, and we've also had Uri Geller on the show who says the same thing as Gruff does. So it almost seems as if there is a connection between remote viewing, ESP, and dreaming.
It might be this idea of Carl Jung. So Carl Jung came up with this idea of the collective unconscious.
Yes.
Now he tried to get it away from kind of New Age concepts of kind of a universal mind or a matrix or something like that. But when you look at what Bohm was talking about in the implicate order and some of these things, and Dean Radin with entangled minds, sometimes I'm wondering if the dream state doesn't accentuate that, doesn't make that more possible. And so that's why I think being in a little bit of an altered state, like some people get in remote viewing or in lucid dreaming, is really an advantage to get information clearly and be able to wake up with it and see what you have.
Does the inner awareness always agree with the dreamer?
It's interesting. So anyone can interact with the awareness behind the dream. All you have to do is ignore the dream figures and just shout out a question.
Right.
Show me something important for me to see, or let me experience unconditional love. You'll have these incredible conceptual experiences. But I recall that my co-author, Carolyn McCready, once she asked in a lucid dream, let me see my energy body. And she said suddenly a kind of holographic image appeared, and she could see kind of these chakra energies, and there are certain symbols around them. And she was really blown away by that. And so the next time she became lucidly aware, she said, okay, now let my energy body be perfectly aligned. And suddenly this non-visible voice, which I assume is the inner self, said, you do not want to do that because it would erase all the unique characteristics of your individuality.
Wow.
And basically it told her, you don't want to go down that path. And so there's a lot of examples of this non-visible awareness telling people that either their assumptions are incorrect or that they're asking to do something that they're either not ready for or that might serve to harm them. And so that's why I think that this inner self that people are contacting in their lucid dreams is really there to educate and instruct and respond, but it's not there to take control or do anything like that. So you really get this sense of kind of an inner self, or, for some people it might even be reminiscent of the soul, that has been talked about for millennia.
Yeah. What about lucid dreaming being used to communicate with those who have passed?
It's interesting, Rob. Oftentimes for lucid dreamers, they become lucidly aware when they see a deceased person. Because when they see the deceased person, they think, wait a second, Grandma's been dead 10 years now. Oh, this must be a dream. And at that moment, they'll become lucidly aware. Now, it's interesting that oftentimes at that point, they'll perceive Grandma through their belief system. So if they don't believe in life after death, they'll just kind of ignore Grandma and go flying around. But I'll tell you what happened to me. My father passed away in 1997. A few months after he passed, I decided in a lucid dream to try to find him. But all the dream figures told me that it was too early, that I shouldn't do it, that it was the wrong time. And so I listened to the dream figures and thought, okay, if my father wants to come contact me, he can. 2 years later, I'm having this dream, and I see this guy coming down a ladder, and it's my father. And immediately I become lucidly aware because I realize that he's deceased. But then I begin to wonder, is this my father as a dream figure, as a projection of my mind, or is this my father as a spiritual being?
Ah.
And so I go up and greet him, And then what I do is I ask him some questions. I go, hey, Dad, you're from the land of the dead. When do you think Mom's going to pass away? And he said, oh, probably in about 2 to 6 years. And I said, of what? And he said, a heart condition. And I asked him a couple more questions, and he responded, and then he told me to please be quiet because he came to tell me things, and he gave me some advice about the family. But you know what? 23 months later, my mom almost passed away of a heart condition. Almost 2 years exactly later, she almost passed away. She made it through that, and then 3 years or so after that, she almost passed away again of a heart condition, this time because she was taking a prescription pill that was actually damaging her heart.
Oh, no.
But she made it through that 2 to 6 year period and continues to live today. But this is how you could get evidence from the deceased dream figure and also kind of differentiate whether they're just a dream symbol, a projection of your mind, or possibly a spiritual being in their own right.
You know, we have so much yet to discover. We think we know everything, but I think we know very little. And it's the work that you do, the work that other scientists do, the work that the medical field does, the work that the spiritual and religious philosophies do, that should all combine their efforts, because if they were to work together, share the information, I believe we'd get a lot further, a lot faster.
Exactly. I think lucid dreaming is one of these revolutionary psychological tools that now it's been validated by science ever since 1980. But this has been something that religious and spiritual and shamanic traditions have been exploring for thousands of years. And they think it's very important. Naropa, the 11th century Indian Buddhist yogi, said that dream yoga was one of the 6 paths to enlightenment. So they put it on a pedestal. They saw that it was important, but I just pray that here in our Western scientific culture that we'll use it in a thoughtful, open manner and really explore some of these deep issues that all of us think about and that all of us have to deal with.
Listen, Robert, the time has come for tonight when you and I must say so long. I have fully enjoyed speaking with you. Thank you for sharing about lucid dreamings. And we'd love to have you back in the future so that we can further discuss this. But for now, please, once again, let our listeners know how they can get your books and how they can read your online magazine.
Yeah, so they can check out my books at my website, lucidadvice.com, and also find them at all the major booksellers. And also they can get the free online magazine, The Lucid Dreaming Experience, at luciddreammagazine.com. And at these various places, you can see what kind of workshops and things I'm up to. But I'm always happy to talk about lucid dreaming, and I really appreciate the chance to do so. Robert, it's been our great pleasure. Take care of yourself, and I look forward to the next time you and I meet here in the X Zone. And who knows, maybe the next time I'm lucid dreaming, I'll run into you. All right, see you there. Good night, Robert. luciddreammagazine.com and www.lucidadvice.com. Our guest this hour has been Robert Waggoner. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. If you'd like to send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV, and our radio website where you can listen to the X-Zone 724-365, www.xzoneradiotv.com.